Hello, and welcome back to another evening of thoughtful exploration and gentle conversation. Tonight, we're settling into the world of Stranger Things as we contemplate the theories, predictions, and fascinating possibilities surrounding how this remarkable story might reach its conclusion. There's quite a bit to discuss, so we'll take our time moving through where the season stands, what's unfolded in both volumes, and then drift into the compelling theories about character fates, potential endings, and how the finale might actually unfold. We'll also touch on the intriguing spin-off hints that have emerged. So, get comfortable, perhaps grab a snack, and let's begin this journey together. Season 5 has been released in a truly unique way that Netflix hasn't attempted before with Stranger Things. Rather than dropping the entire season at once or splitting it into two parts as they did with Season 4, they chose 3 separate releases spread across the holiday season. Volume 1 arrived on November 26th, offering the first 4 episodes of the season. Then Volume 2 appeared on Christmas Day, December 25th, bringing 3 additional episodes and bringing the total to 7 out of 8. The finale, which they're presenting as its own special event, arrives on New Year's Eve, December 31st, at 8 in the evening Eastern Time, 5 in the afternoon Pacific. What's particularly interesting is that this finale is a single episode, yet it's remarkably substantial, running over 2 hours in length. It's essentially feature film territory. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed this represents their series finale, the absolute conclusion of the main Stranger Things narrative, and they wanted to provide it with the send-off it deserves. They've even arranged for it to screen in over 500 theatres across the United States and Canada at the exact moment it becomes available on Netflix, which is quite extraordinary when you consider it. Streaming shows rarely receive theatrical releases of this nature. This 3-part structure has effectively transformed the final season into an extended event spanning nearly 6 weeks, keeping Stranger Things actively part of the cultural conversation in a way that a single-day release might not have achieved. It's been fascinating observing how theories have evolved with each volume's release. Let's explore what's actually transpired so far, beginning with Volume 1, which arrived back in November and fundamentally shifted many assumptions. The first 4 episodes of Season 5 established the groundwork in ways both familiar and genuinely surprising. We find ourselves in the fall of 1987, and Hawkins bears deep scars from the rifts that opened at the conclusion of Season 4. The town exists under military quarantine, meaning soldiers are positioned throughout, with checkpoints and curfews transforming it into something resembling a dystopian version of the quiet Indiana town from Season 1. The military presence serves not merely to protect residents from upside-down creatures still lurking nearby, but actively pursues Eleven, forcing her back into concealment. The most significant revelation in Volume 1 centers on Will's powers. Will Byers, whose disappearance initiated this entire saga in the very first episode, finally receives his moment. He possesses telekinetic abilities similar to Eleven's, and we witness him use them to devastating effect against an army of Demogorgons in Episode 4. It was one of the series' most visually stunning sequences, watching Will overcome these creatures that have terrorized them for years. Noah Schnapp's performance beautifully captured both the power and the fear in Will's expression as he realized his capabilities. This wasn't entirely unexpected. For those paying close attention, the show has been dropping hints about Will's connection to the Upside Down since Season 2, when the Mind Flayer possessed him. He's consistently been able to sense when the Upside Down was near, could feel Vecna's presence. Now we understand why. Vecna chose him deliberately. All those years ago, not through random misfortune, Will's powers weren't the only noteworthy return in Volume 1. Carly, also known as 8, reappeared after her single Season 2 episode that many viewers skipped during rewatches. She's endured considerable hardship, having been held captive by the military in some facility within the Upside Down, which raises numerous questions about government activities. The central plot of Volume 1 focuses on Vecna's plan, which proves genuinely terrifying. He requires 12 children to serve as vessels for his power, and by Episode 4's conclusion, he's acquired them. Holly Wheeler, the younger sister of Nancy and Mike, gets kidnapped along with 11 other children from Hawkins. Holly's role proves particularly significant because she's young enough to be controlled, yet smart enough to be useful. Watching Nell, Fisher portray this character, who's simultaneously brave and absolutely terrified, has been remarkable. Vecna has been absent since Season 4's ending. After 11, Steve, Nancy and Robin nearly killed him, he vanished without anyone knowing his whereabouts or plans. Volume 1 reveals he's been biding his time, gathering strength, preparing for this final assault. His intention is to merge the Upside Down, or what we now understand is actually the Abyss, with Hawkins, essentially reshaping reality itself. Max remains trapped in Vecna's mindscape, this dreamlike nightmare realm that Holly later names Kamchatka, after the evil planet in A Wrinkle in Time. Max has existed there since she died and was revived at Season 4's conclusion, so approximately 18 months for her, simply surviving in this hellscape while her physical body lies in a Hawkins hospital bed. Sadie Sink's performance, when Max finally appears, is genuinely heartbreaking, because you can observe how profoundly this experience has altered her. An interesting detail many missed: the Duffer Brothers confirmed in interviews that Max has been actively hiding from Vecna throughout this entire period, learning the landscape of his mind, discovering his weaknesses. She's not merely a victim, but has been gathering intelligence, which becomes quite important later. The stakes in Volume 1 are established clearly. It's no longer simply about defeating Vecna. It's about saving these 12 children, protecting 11 from the military, preventing the rifts from spreading, and somehow discovering a method to seal the Upside Down permanently. All while Hawkins exists under martial law, and most adults consider the kids either unstable or dangerous. There's also this continuing thread about the anniversary of Will's disappearance approaching, November 6th, 1983. That date has always carried significance in Stranger Things, and the fact that the final battle builds toward that same time frame feels quite intentional, as though the entire story is completing a circle. Volume 1 established the stage substantially, but Volume 2 took things considerably further. Volume 2 of Stranger Things. Season 5 arrived on Christmas Day, and it proved to be one of the most information-dense collections of episodes the series has produced. If Volume 1 felt packed with revelations, the 3 episodes that dropped on the 25th essentially rewrote our understanding of Stranger Things mythology. The absolutely most significant reveal, the one that changes the entire context of the series, concerns what the Upside Down actually is. It's not another dimension at all, it's a wormhole. Dustin discovers this in Episode 5 when he locates Dr. Brenner's journal in the Upside Down version of Hawkins' lab. His explanation to Steve represents one of those moments requiring pause for processing. The Upside Down is a bridge between 2 points in time and space, between our world and another world. It's constructed from something called exotic matter, this theoretical substance that stabilizes the wormhole and prevents its collapse. And the other world is the Abyss. The Abyss represents the actual alternate dimension, this chaotic realm of pure darkness and nightmare creatures, where the Demogorgons, the Mind Flayer, and all other horrors originate. It's where 11 accidentally sent Henry Creel, who became Vecna, back in Season 4 during the Hawkins Lab massacre. According to the Duffer Brothers, they've actually been calling it Dimension X in their internal documents, which references Ninja Turtles, but Dustin names it the Abyss in Episode 7, after the realm of chaos and evil in Dungeons and Dragons. To break it down simply, Earth is our world, the Abyss is Vecna's world, and the Upside Down is the tunnel connecting them. Brenner and the military created the exotic matter barrier, stabilizing this tunnel, probably without realizing what they were actually accomplishing. Vecna's been using the Upside Down as a pathway to reach back to Earth, and his ultimate plan involves pulling the Abyss close enough to Hawkins that he can merge the two worlds together. What makes this even more devastating is the revelation about where Eleven's powers actually originated. Dr. Brenner didn't simply locate children with natural abilities and train them, he created them. Eleven's powers, Kaylee's powers, all the numbered children's abilities came from transfusions of Henry Creel's blood. Brenner realized after experimenting on young Henry that his blood carried something unique, something that could grant others telekinetic abilities if introduced properly. So 11 isn't merely fighting Vecna, she's fighting someone whose literal blood flows through her veins. The emotional centre of Volume 2, though, is Will's coming out scene. It occurs in Episode 7, and Noah Schnapp delivered it beautifully. Will gathers everyone together, his friends and family, and tells them he doesn't like girls. He explains that Vecna showed him a vision of the future where he was honest about who he is, and in that vision everyone drifted away from him. His friends stopped calling, his family became distant, and he ended up completely alone. Vecna was attempting to use Will's fear against him, trying to isolate him, but it backfired because instead of running, instead of judging, everyone simply embraces him. Joyce tells him he'll never lose her. Jonathan says the same. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, all of them, one by one, tell Will that he's loved and he's not going anywhere. It's one of the most beautiful scenes in the entire series. There's also the Nancy and Jonathan situation, which finally receives resolution. They break up. It's melancholic, but honestly, somewhat inevitable at this point. Nancy straightforwardly tells Jonathan that she doesn't envision a future with him anymore. And while she also states there's nothing there with Steve, everyone observed the chemistry between them in the upside-down scenes. The door remains open, but whether Steve actually achieves his dream of 6 little nuggets remains to be seen. Max and Holly's escape from Kamchatka represents another major plot thread in Volume 2. In Episode 6, titled Escape from Kamchatka, the two of them explore this landscape, attempting to find an exit, and they stumble into one of Henry Creel's repressed memories. They literally fall down a mine shaft and witness young Henry, perhaps 8 years old, encountering a Russian spy or scientist in the Nevada desert. This scene proves crucial because it connects to the stage play Stranger Things, The First Shadow, which has been running on Broadway. In the play, we learn that Henry disappeared on his 8th birthday and returned changed somehow. Volume 2 shows us what transpired. The scientist shoots young Henry in the hand, probably terrified of this strange child in a Boy Scout uniform, and Henry kills him with a rock out of fear and self-defense. Then Henry opens the briefcase the scientist was protecting. Here's where it becomes frustrating. The camera pans away. We don't see what's inside the briefcase, but Ross Duffer has confirmed in interviews that we will see it in the finale. And whatever's inside apparently explains everything about how Henry became Vecna. The plan going into the finale is relatively straightforward, at least conceptually. The group wants to let Vecna draw the abyss close enough to Hawkins that they can reach it through the radio tower. Eleven and Kaylee will enter Vecna's mind psychically to fight him from the inside, while the rest of the team plants a bomb near the exotic matter holding the wormhole open. They set a timer, escape, and when the bomb detonates, the bridge collapses. The abyss gets sealed away forever. Vecna trapped inside, and Earth is safe. But there's a substantial complication that only Eleven and Kaylee know about. In Episode 5, Carly reveals to Eleven what the military was doing to her while imprisoned. She was connected to IVs and her blood was being transfused into pregnant women in an attempt to create more powered individuals. It's the same program that created them initially, just updated for a new generation. Apparently, most of the women were dying because it wasn't working properly. But Dr. K, portrayed by Linda Hamilton, is determined to perfect the process. Kaylee's solution is brutal but logical. The only way to permanently stop the military from using their blood to create weapons is to die. If they sacrifice themselves when the Upside Down collapses, their bodies are destroyed, their blood is gone, and the program dies with them. Eleven doesn't agree to this plan definitively. But at Episode 7's conclusion, there's this look between her and Carly that suggests she's at least considering it. Ross Duffer described it as a sense of dread and uncertainty that pervades the final moments before the big battle. Episode 7 ends with Holly and the other 11 children sitting at a dinner table in the Creel house, holding hands in a seance. Their eyes roll back, their necks jolt toward the sky, and you can observe the power radiating from them as Vecna uses them as a battery to fuel his final plan. That's where Volume 2 leaves us, with absolutely everything on the line and only one episode remaining to resolve it all. Before we explore character fates and ending theories, we should discuss the Upside Down, the Abyss, and what's actually occurring with all of this, because the mythology can become quite complex, especially with all the new information Volume 2 presented. For 4 seasons, everyone assumed the Upside Down was simply this alternate dimension existing parallel to our world, a dark mirror version of Hawkins, where monsters lived. That's what the characters thought. That's what Brenner probably thought when running his experiments. But everyone was mistaken. The upside down isn't a place, it's a passage. Consider it like a tunnel connecting two actual locations. On one end, you have Earth, our normal world. On the other end, you have the abyss, this primordial dimension of chaos where nothing good exists. The upside down is simply the tunnel between them, held together by exotic matter, this theoretical substance that scientists have speculated about for decades in quantum physics. Essentially, it's the adhesive, keeping the wormhole from collapsing in on itself. What's fascinating here is that Brenner and the military accidentally stabilised this wormhole back when 11 sent Henry Creel through to the abyss in 1979. Before that, the connection between Earth and the abyss was probably unstable, fleeting, perhaps just brief moments when the barrier between worlds grew thin. But when 11 tore that hole in reality at Hawkins' lab, and when Brenner's team rushed in to study it and stabilise it with their exotic matter experiments, they essentially built a permanent bridge to a realm of darkness, and Vecna's been using that bridge ever since. The abyss itself is where all the nightmare creatures originate. The Demogorgons evolved there. The Mind Flayer exists there. It's a dimension of pure hostility and darkness, and Henry Creel wandered around in it alone for years after 11 banished him. Vecna's plan is to draw the abyss close enough to Earth that the two worlds begin to merge. He's using the 12 children as amplifiers because their combined psychic energy provides him enough power to manipulate the wormhole itself. If he succeeds, Hawkins doesn't simply get invaded by monsters. It becomes part of the abyss. Reality itself gets rewritten, and from there, Vecna can spread that corruption across the entire world. The Duffer Brothers have mentioned they wrote a 20-page mythology document for Netflix back when they pitched season 1, and apparently all of this was included from the beginning. They've been holding on to these answers for nearly a decade, simply waiting for the right moment to reveal them. It comes down to this. The upside down is the bridge. The abyss is a realm of darkness, and Vecna wants to bring that darkness to Hawkins. The only way to stop him is to destroy the bridge while he's on the other side. Simple in concept, though not in execution, because destroying the bridge might mean sacrificing the people powerful enough to actually accomplish it. At the end of Volume 2, the group has developed an actual plan. And it's Steve who comes up with the core idea, Steve Harrington, who began this series as the popular jock boyfriend and spent the last few seasons getting beaten up and looking after kids and longing for Nancy. He's the one who figures out the strategy for defeating Vecna. It's such a perfect, full circle moment for his character, demonstrating how much he's grown from season 1. Here's how the plan works. Instead of attempting to stop Vecna from drawing the abyss closer to Hawkins, they're going to allow him to do it. They need the abyss close enough that they can actually reach it, because that's where Vecna is hiding. So they wait until he pulls that dimension right up against the wormhole, creating a temporary bridge that the team can access through the radio tower in Hawkins. Once that bridge is stable, Eleven and Carly go in psychically. They enter Vecna's mind the same way Eleven did with Billy back in season 3, the same way she's piggybacked into people's consciousness before, but this time Carly's accompanying her. Together, they're powerful enough to actually fight Vecna on his home territory. While they're keeping him distracted with the mental battle, the physical team does the real work. The rest of the group, led by Steve, Dustin and the others, uses the radio tower as an entry point into the Upside Down. They have a bomb, presumably something Murray and the military can provide, and they plant it near the exotic matter stabilising the wormhole. Dustin's the one who explains the technical aspects. Set a timer, escape back through the tower, and when the bomb detonates, the exotic matter gets destroyed. Without that stabilisation, the wormhole collapses. The bridge between Earth and the abyss disappears, and with it, everything on the other side gets sealed away forever. Vecna, the Demogorgons, the Mind Flayer, all of it gone. What's appealing about this plan is that it actually uses everyone's strengths. Eleven and Carly provide the psychic power. The kids who've been fighting monsters for years provide the courage and tactical knowledge. The adults provide the resources and the muscle. It's a team effort in the truest sense, which has always been what Stranger Things represents, the party working together. But as we know, plans in Stranger Things never proceed exactly as expected. There's always something that goes wrong, always a complication nobody anticipated. And in this case, the complication is substantial because Eleven and Carly have a secret. One of the most devastating moments in Volume 2 happens in a quiet conversation between Eleven and Carly that nobody else witnesses. It's in Episode 5, right after they rescue Callie from the military facility in the Upside Down. It's the kind of scene that simply stays with you afterwards, because of how heavy it is. Carly tells Eleven what the military was doing to her while she was imprisoned. She was connected to multiple IVs, constantly attached to these machines. Initially, she didn't understand why. But then, during one occasion when she nearly escaped, she discovered the truth. Her blood was being transfused into pregnant women. Dozens of them, perhaps more, all arranged in hospital beds, while Kaylee's blood was pumped into their veins. Dr. K, the character Linda Hamilton portrays, was running the entire operation. The goal was exactly what you'd expect. They were attempting to create more people like Eleven and Carly, more powered individuals that the government could control and weaponize. It's literally the same program that created them initially, just updated for a new generation. The horrifying aspect is that it wasn't working. Carly could tell from the screams and the chaos that the pregnant women were in agony. Most of them were dying because their bodies couldn't handle whatever was in Carly's blood. But Dr. K wasn't stopping. She was simply adjusting variables, trying different dosages, different timing, convinced that eventually she'd crack the formula. And if the military ever obtained Eleven's blood as well, if they could combine samples from both of them, study the differences, refine the process, there'd be no stopping them. They could create an entire army of psychic soldiers. Kaylee's solution to this problem is brutal in its logic. She tells Eleven that the only way to protect the world from this program, the only way to ensure the military can never use their blood to create weapons, is to die. Not simply die, but to die in the Upside Down when it collapses, their bodies destroyed, their blood gone, the source material completely eliminated. It's the only way to be certain. Eleven doesn't agree to this plan outright. We don't hear her say yes, but Ross Duffer described the final moments of Episode 7 as having a sense of dread and uncertainty that pervades everything, and you can observe it in Millie Bobby Brown's performance. There's this look between Eleven and Carly, this understanding passing between them, and it very much feels like Eleven is considering it, like she knows Carly might be right. What makes this even more heartbreaking is that nobody else knows. Mike doesn't know. Hopper doesn't know. Joyce, Will, Max, Steve. None of them have any idea that Eleven and Carly are planning to potentially sacrifice themselves even if they win the battle. So everyone's going into this final fight, thinking the plan is to destroy the Upside Down and come home victorious. They don't realise that for Eleven and Kaylee, there might not be a coming home. The Duffer brothers have mentioned in interviews that they're not trying to shock people or upset audiences simply for the sake of it. They've specifically pushed back against the idea of doing a Red Wedding-style massacre where they eliminate characters for shock value. But they have also stated that deaths need to feel meaningful and earned, and that the stakes need to feel real. This feels real. The military threat has been building since Season 1. We've observed what the government is willing to do to people with powers. Brenner's entire arc was about control and weaponization. Having that come full circle, having Eleven and Carly face a choice between living as fugitives forever or ending the cycle permanently, that's not shock value. That's the logical conclusion of everything the show's been building toward. The question is whether the Duffer brothers will actually proceed with it, or whether they'll discover some third option that allows Eleven and Carly to survive without becoming eternal targets. Going into the finale, we have this substantial question hanging over everything. Will Eleven and Kaylee really have to die to save the world? Let's discuss the question everyone's been asking since Volume 1 arrived. Who's going to die in the finale? Every season of Stranger Things has featured at least one major death. Barb in Season 1, Bob in Season 2, Billy in Season 3, Eddie in Season 4. The show's established a pattern of losing characters we care about, and the Duffer brothers have made it clear that the stakes in Season 5 are higher than they've ever been. So the real question isn't whether someone dies, But who? Let's start with the most obvious candidate, 11. The setup for an 11 sacrifice is present throughout Volume 2. Kaylee's plan to die in the Upside Down, the military threat that will never disappear as long as 11's alive, her entire arc about finding where she belongs and what her purpose is. It all points toward a heroic sacrifice where she gives her life to save the world and free herself from being hunted forever. There's some circumstantial evidence that supports this. Leaked photographs from the finale set show Mike and Hopper together in scenes where 11 is conspicuously absent. Hopper's wearing his sheriff uniform for the first time in seasons, which feels significant, and Millie Bobby Brown has been quite emotional in interviews about saying goodbye to the character. But here's the consideration. It almost feels too obvious. If we can all see it coming from considerable distance, would the Duffer Brothers actually do it? They've stated they're not trying to shock people, that they want the ending to feel inevitable rather than surprising. An 11 sacrifice would feel inevitable, given everything we know, but it also feels like it might be a misdirection, setting up the most obvious tragic ending and then pulling the rug out with something else. Then there's Carly. She just returned after being absent since Season 2, and some fans think she came back specifically to die in 11's place. It would be a redemption arc for her character, atoning for whatever she's done in the years since we last saw her. It would allow 11 to live, which many people want. The emotional impact would still be there because we've spent time with Kaylee in Season 5, but it wouldn't be quite as devastating as losing 11. It's the compromise ending. Someone dies to stop the military threat, but it's not our main character. This could genuinely happen. It feels very Stranger Things to bring back a character specifically to give them a heroic ending. Will is another name that keeps appearing in death predictions, and this one creates considerable discomfort. The theory suggests that Will's powers are too similar to Vecna's. He's been connected to the Upside Down since Season 1. He was Vecna's first victim, the first vessel, and Vecna specifically chose him because he knew Will was vulnerable and could be controlled. So perhaps in order to fully destroy Vecna and seal the Upside Down, Will has to die too, as though they're linked and you can't eliminate one without eliminating the other. There's also this theory circulating about how Will's powers in Episode 4 looked exactly like Vecna's killing curse. Same visual effects, same energy, same everything. And if Will's powers come from the same source as Vecna's, then perhaps they're both drawing from the abyss, and severing that connection requires Will's death. But I genuinely can't envision this happening. Will just had his coming out scene. He just got accepted and loved by everyone. He just stepped into his power after spending 4 seasons being the victim. Eliminating him now, right after he's finally found himself, would be incredibly cruel, not meaningful, just cruel. And the Duffer Brothers have stated they're not doing things for shock value. Noah Schnapp himself has discussed how important Will's story is for representation, and it seems unlikely they'd undercut that by immediately ending his journey. Then we have Steve. Sweet, perpetually beaten up Steve Harrington. He's had so many close calls throughout the series, and Volume 2 had another one when he was fighting in the Upside Down Hawkins lab. There's this whole question of how Steve is still alive at this point, how he survived this long when he's constantly throwing himself into danger to protect the kids. His character arc is all about family and finding his purpose. So a heroic sacrifice where he dies, protecting the people he loves, would be very characteristic. Joe Keery's been emotional in interviews as well. There's been discussion about Steve's dream of having 6 kids with Nancy, this future he wants, that he's never going to get if Nancy doesn't choose him. A popular theory is that Steve dies before he can have that happy ending, which would be absolutely gutting. But here's an interesting wrinkle. Jimmy Fallon sort of addressed this theory when Joe Keery was on The Tonight Show. He asked directly about Steve dying, and Keery's reaction suggested it might not happen. Of course, actors often protect spoilers, so who knows, but one can hope Steve makes it out alive. As for supporting characters, the most likely candidates are those who've been around but aren't part of the core group. Murray Bauman seems like a prime candidate for a heroic death. Mr. Clark, the science teacher, could go out helping the kids one final time. Karen Wheeler had a really close call in Volume 2 that seemed like it was setting up something bigger. And Jonathan has been somewhat overshadowed by the Steve and Nancy situation, which sometimes means a character's being set up for a tragic end. Holly's in constant danger throughout Volume 2, nearly dying repeatedly, but it seems unlikely they'll actually eliminate a child. That feels like a line the show won't cross. What's interesting is what the Duffer brothers have actually stated about deaths in Season 5. Matt Duffer told reporters that they're so attached to the characters and the actors that making the decision to eliminate anyone is challenging. Ross Duffer said they're not doing a Red Wedding situation where they wipe out 8 characters, and they're not doing anything simply for shock value. But he also mentioned that when they do a death, the impact has to make sense narratively, and it has to resonate. They've specifically pointed to Eddie Munson as an example. Eddie died at the end of Season 4, and his death resonates throughout all of Season 5. Dustin's still grieving. The Hellfire Club still remembers him. His sacrifice meant something. That's the kind of death they want to create, if they do any at all. So someone's probably dying, perhaps more than one someone. But who? That's the question we won't have answered until December 31st. Now, having spent considerable time discussing death, let's pivot to the more optimistic theories, because there are definitely ways this could end without major casualties. The time travel solution is probably the most popular happy ending theory circulating, and it has some solid backing. We know now that the Upside Down is a wormhole, which is literally a passage through time and space. That's not simply dimension hopping, that's potential time manipulation, and the show's been dropping time travel hints for years. Mr. Clark's flea and the acrobat analogy, back in Season 1, where he explained how you could theoretically bend space-time to create a shortcut, that wasn't just a throwaway explanation, it was set up. Plus, A Wrinkle in Time has been referenced constantly in Season 5. Holly names Vecna's mindscape Kamchatka after the evil planet in that book. The whole concept of tessering, which is wrinkling time to travel across the fabric of the universe, fits perfectly with what we now know about wormholes and exotic matter. What if the solution isn't to destroy the Upside Down, but to travel back and prevent it from being created in the first place? There's even some visual evidence that supports this. Those leaked photographs of Hopper wearing his sheriff uniform, the one he hasn't worn since Season 3, and Mike being with him in scenes where 11 is absent. If they've travelled back to an earlier point in the timeline, that would explain why Hopper looks like old Hopper, and why 11 might not be there yet. Perhaps they reset things. Perhaps they save everyone by changing the past. The power transfer theory is another interesting option. What if 11 finds a way to transfer her powers to someone else? Or better yet, to disperse them among multiple people so no single person is powerful enough for the military to exploit? If her blood is what makes her valuable, and her powers are what make her dangerous to herself and others, removing those powers would solve the problem without anyone dying. She'd still be alive, still be Jane Hopper, just without the telekinesis. It would echo certain narratives where destroying a connection doesn't kill the person, just removes the power link. 11 could lose her powers and gain her freedom. It's a sacrifice, but not the ultimate one. Then there's the fake death theory, which would be quite spy thriller-esque but could work. 11 and Carly stage their deaths in the collapse of the Upside Down. They destroy all samples of their blood that the military possesses, make it appear they died in the explosion, and then disappear with new identities. The government thinks they're gone, so they stop hunting them, and 11 gets to live a normal life under a different name. It's not perfect. She'd have to leave everyone behind, but she'd be alive. This would mean 11 gets what she's always wanted, a quiet life, a family, no more running, no more fighting, just peace. Even if it's peace under a false name in a different town. The collective victory theory is the most optimistic of all, the full power of friendship ending. Will, 11, Carly, and perhaps even some of the 12 kidnapped children all combine their powers together. They work as a team, combining their abilities to defeat Vecna without any single person having to sacrifice themselves. It would fulfill the promise from the Season 5 synopsis about needing everyone. The full party standing together one final time. This is the ending where found family saves the day, where the bonds they've built over 5 seasons are literally what defeats evil. No death, no separation, just the party winning together and then getting to actually enjoy the victory. They could all return to playing Dungeons and Dragons, riding bikes, being kids again, or, well, young adults at this point. What makes these theories appealing is that they're not wish fulfillment in the sense of ignoring consequences. They still require sacrifice. Time travel means changing the timeline and possibly losing memories or relationships. Power transfer means Eleven loses part of herself. Fake death means leaving everyone behind. Collective victory means everyone putting themselves at risk simultaneously. There are still costs, just not the ultimate cost of death. But here's the consideration. As much as one might want to believe one of these will happen, the Duffer Brothers have been quite clear that the ending they've planned feels inevitable. And inevitable doesn't usually mean everyone lives happily ever after. It means the story goes where it was always meant to go, even if that destination is painful. So there are definitely ways everyone could make it out alive, but whether the Duffer Brothers will actually pursue that route remains to be seen. Speaking of the Duffer Brothers, let's discuss what they've actually stated about the ending, because they've been quite careful about what they reveal, but they've dropped some significant hints in interviews worth analysing. The first thing to know is that Matt and Ross Duffer have had the final scene of Stranger Things planned for years, since before they even finished season 1. They knew exactly how the series would end. Matt Duffer told The Hollywood Reporter that he hopes by the time people reach the end, it feels like there's something inevitable about what happens. Not surprising, not shocking, but inevitable, as though this was always where the story was headed. Looking back, you can observe all the pieces clicking into place. That word, inevitable, keeps appearing in their interviews. They're not trying to subvert expectations or create some major twist ending that nobody saw coming. They want it to feel earned and right, like the natural conclusion to everything they've been building. One mystery they've confirmed will be solved in the finale is the briefcase. Remember that scene in Volume 2 where young Henry kills the scientist and opens the briefcase, but we don't see what's inside? Ross Duffer has explicitly stated that we will see that briefcase again, that we're going to get the answers to those questions in the final episode. Whatever's inside apparently explains a massive part of Henry's transformation into Vecna, and it ties into the first Shadow play's backstory about him visiting Dimension X as a child. As for deaths, the Duffer Brothers have tried to manage expectations without spoiling anything. Ross told the press that it's not a Red Wedding situation like from Game of Thrones, that they're not going to wipe out 8 of their characters. Matt added that they're not doing anything for shock value, that when they do a death, if they do a death, it has to make sense narratively and it has to resonate. They've pointed to Eddie Munson as the model for how they approach character deaths. Eddie died at the end of season 4, and according to Ross, his death resonates all the way through the entirety of this season. Dustin still grieving. The Hellfire Club still remembers him. His sacrifice meant something. That's the kind of impact they want if they're going to eliminate someone. The mythology payoff is something they're particularly excited about. Matt Duffer mentioned that especially as we progress into the finale, we start to get answers about why Will was kidnapped, how it ties in with Holly and all of this, and that everything sort of comes full circle. They wrote that 20-page mythology document for Netflix back in 2016, and apparently everything in season 5 has been pulling from that original plan. And then there's the spin-off tease. This one's fascinating because Ross Duffer literally told the press that there's one small scene in the finale that gives a hint as to what the spin-off will be, that they'll see if people pick up on it. And Matt Duffer immediately responded with, "Why are you giving people that information?" which is brilliant. So we know there's an Easter egg hidden somewhere in the finale that reveals the future of the Stranger Things universe, but it's going to be subtle enough that we might miss it on first viewing. What's interesting about all these interviews is how emotional the creators and cast have been. Finn Wolfhard said the final day of filming was incredibly emotional. David Harbour said the entire cast cried uncontrollably and that it's the best episode they have ever made. Jamie Campbell Bower, who portrays Vecna, said viewers should feel like they're holding onto their chairs during his scenes. Based on what the Duffer Brothers have stated, we're looking at an ending that's emotional, inevitable, and meaningful, but not gratuitously tragic. They're tying up loose ends, answering questions, and setting up the future, all while delivering something that feels true to the story they have been telling for nearly a decade. Now, let's explore how the actual finale might unfold, because with over 2 hours of runtime, there's considerable ground to cover and numerous storylines that need resolution. The finale will probably open right where episode 7 left off, with the 12 children in their trance at the Creel house dinner table. Holly's bleeding from being pushed down the stairs, scared and defeated, and Vecna's using all of them as a psychic battery to draw the Abyss closer to Hawkins. That seance is the ticking clock for the entire episode. The longer those kids stay in that trance, the stronger Vecna gets, and the closer the two worlds come to merging. The opening will likely be intense and immediate. No slow build, no catching our breath. We're jumping straight into crisis mode with the group realising they need to execute their plan right now before it's too late. Steve rallying everyone, Dustin going over the technical details one more time, Eleven and Carly preparing themselves mentally for what they have to do. The mindscape battle between Eleven, Carly and Vecna is going to be one of the centerpieces of the finale, and it will probably be quite spectacular. We've observed Eleven fight in the mental realm before, back in season 3 when she went into Billy's mind, and that was already visually stunning. But this time, she has Kaylee with her, which means we'll probably witness their powers working in tandem. Carly can create illusions, make people see things that aren't there. Eleven can manipulate reality with her mind. Together, they could trap Vecna in a mental prison of their own making. Max's knowledge is going to be crucial here. She spent 18 months exploring Vecna's mindscape, learning his weaknesses, discovering which memories he avoids and which ones give him power. She'll probably guide Eleven and Carly through his mind, showing them the path to his core, to the part of him that's still Henry Creel and vulnerable. Holly might play a role as well, fighting back from inside the seance, using her connection to Mike through that necklace to stay grounded. It'll be less about physical combat, and more about psychological warfare. Vecna trying to break Eleven by showing her visions of failure, of her friends dying, of the world ending. Eleven countering by showing him his own humanity, his own pain, perhaps even the briefcase memory in full. A battle of wills and trauma and determination. While that's happening in the mental plane, the physical assault will be unfolding in Hawkins. The group making their way to the radio tower, fighting through whatever forces Vecna has guarding it. We'll probably see everyone get their hero moment here, Steve with his nail bat, taking down demogorgons as he's been doing for years, Dustin coordinating the team, calling out weak points and strategies, Lucas protecting Max's physical body while her mind is elsewhere, Mike refusing to give up on Eleven and his sister. Nancy is going to use her skills because she's proven time and again that she's quite capable. Jonathan will probably be right there with her, perhaps reconciling some of their relationship matters in the midst of battle. Joyce and Hopper will be the adult backup, the experienced fighters who've survived Russian prisons and upside-down horrors. And Murray will absolutely have some unexpected moment where he saves everyone with something completely unanticipated. But the real revelation, the one that changes everything, is going to be the briefcase. We're going to see what young Henry found in that encounter in 1959. My speculation is that it contains something from Dimension X itself, perhaps a piece of the Abyss in physical form, some kind of exotic matter or interdimensional artifact that a government scientist was transporting. When Henry opened it, whatever was inside infected him, changed his blood, gave him his powers. It's why Brenner was able to track him down, why his blood could be used to create other powered individuals. He's not naturally gifted. He's been altered by something from the Abyss. If that's accurate, it means defeating Vecna isn't simply about eliminating Henry Creel. It's about severing his connection to the Abyss itself, removing whatever that artifact put inside him. And that might be where Eleven's powers come in, because if her abilities come from Henry's blood, she might be the only one who can reverse the process. The sacrifice moment is going to be quite emotional, whether it's Eleven and Kaylee proceeding with their plan, or Will offering himself instead, or Steve making a last-second decision to stay behind, or someone we haven't even considered stepping up. There's going to be a scene where someone says goodbye, where they tell the people they love how much they matter, where everyone realises that victory is going to cost them something irreplaceable. Tear-soaked faces. Mike telling Eleven he loves her for what might be the last time. Joyce holding Will and refusing to let go. Dustin and Steve having one final moment of their friendship. Nancy finally being honest about her feelings. It's going to be emotional and raw. The bomb sequence will be tense, the timer counting down, the team making their way back through the upside down to the exit point, and something going wrong because of course something goes wrong. Perhaps someone gets separated from the group. Perhaps the Demogorgons make one final push. Perhaps the exotic matter starts destabilising faster than expected, and they have less time than they thought. There'll be a moment where it looks like not everyone's going to make it out, where the choice becomes save yourself or save your friend. And then the explosion, the wormhole collapsing, the upside down tearing apart as the exotic matter gets destroyed. Vecna trapped in the abyss, the bridge to Earth disappearing forever. The 12 children released from their trance, gasping awake, Holly reaching for Mike. The rift in Hawkins' ceiling shut, reality stabilising, silence. The aftermath will probably show us Hawkins in the days or weeks following the battle, the military, pulling out because there's nothing left to guard. The town rebuilding both literally and emotionally, perhaps services for whoever didn't make it, or hospital scenes. For those who barely survived, the characters processing what they've been through, what they've lost, what they've gained, there will probably be a time jump. Not a huge one, but enough to show us that life goes on. Perhaps a few months, perhaps a year. We'll see the characters adjusting to a world without the upside down, without the constant threat hanging over them. And there will be callbacks to season 1, mirrors to how this all started. Perhaps we end on Will, back on those swings where he used to play before he was taken, or the kids gathered around a Dungeons and Dragons table again, this time with genuine smiles instead of haunted looks. The original soundtrack playing, perhaps, Should I Stay or Should I Go, one more time. The final scene, the one the Duffer Brothers have known about for years, is probably going to be quiet and intimate. Not a big action sequence, but something personal, a moment between characters, or a single character alone that encapsulates what the entire journey has meant. And somewhere in that ending, hidden in the background, or tucked into a line of dialogue, or shown on a television screen in the corner of the frame, there'll be the spin-off tease. Something small that hints at what's next for the Stranger Things universe. Of course, this is all speculation, but based on what we know, something close to this feels fairly likely. Let's discuss something perhaps a bit lighter, or maybe not lighter, but definitely important to many fans, the relationships. Because while we're all concerned about who's going to die and whether the world gets saved, we're also invested in these characters finding happiness with each other, romantically or otherwise. And the finale is going to have to address at least some of these relationship questions. Steve and Nancy are the obvious starting point. Nancy and Jonathan officially broke up in Volume 2, which was melancholic, but honestly felt like it had been approaching for a while. Nancy told Jonathan straightforwardly that she doesn't see a future with them anymore. And while she also stated there's nothing really there with Steve, everyone observed the chemistry between them in those upside-down scenes. The way they moved together, the way they communicated without words, the way Steve looked at her. That chemistry is still there. It's simply a question of whether Nancy's willing to act on it. The door's open now. Steve's dream of having 6 little nuggets, of building the family he never had growing up. That's still out there waiting for him. Will he get it? Will Nancy choose him this time? Or will the finale end with them going their separate ways, both of them having grown beyond their high school romance? One simply hopes Steve finds happiness. He's been through quite enough. Will and Mike is the relationship that's going to be emotional no matter what happens. Will came out in Volume 2, which was beautiful and everything it needed to be. But he's still got feelings for Mike, and Mike still seems fairly oblivious to it. Will called Mike his Tammy Thompson, which, if you remember, is the girl Robin had a crush on that Steve thought couldn't sing. It's both sweet and somewhat brutal, because Mike didn't even catch the reference. Robin gave Will some good advice about not needing reciprocation to feel valid, about being proud of who you are, regardless of whether someone loves you back. And Will seems to have taken that to heart. but there will probably be at least one more conversation between Will and Mike before this is over. Perhaps not a full confession, perhaps just an acknowledgement, a moment where Mike understands and they can move forward as friends without secrets between them. That would feel right for both characters. Robin and Vicky are probably safe and happy in the background, which is exactly what they deserve. Their relationship hasn't been the focus, but it's been this quiet constant throughout season 5. Hopefully we get to see them together in the epilogue, simply being normal and content. Joyce and Hopper are endgame, obviously. They've been through literal darkness for each other, Russian prisons and upside-down monsters, and government conspiracies. If either of them dies in the finale, it'll be saving the other one, because that's who they are. But the hope is we get to see them both survive and finally get their happy ending. Perhaps a suggestion of a wedding in the epilogue, or simply them sitting together in their house, quiet and peaceful, knowing they're safe. Lucas and Max had that tender reunion in Volume 2, when Max came back to the real world, and you could observe how much he'd missed her, how scared he'd been of losing her. They're probably going to make it through this together. Max has been through too much to die now, and Lucas has been too loyal to lose her. It would be lovely to see them in the epilogue simply being teenagers again, going to the movies or hanging out at the arcade, normal couple activities. Dustin and Susie are the long-distance relationship that somehow works, despite being completely ridiculous. Their duet in Season 3 is still one of the most delightful moments in the entire series, and hopefully we get at least one more bit of Dustin and Susie being adorable together. They'll probably be fine. Dustin's too intelligent to die, and Susie's too far away to be in danger. The romances might not be the main focus of the finale, but they'll definitely play a part in the emotional payoff. Because at the end of the day, Stranger Things has always been about love. Not simply romantic love, but love between friends, love between family, the love that makes people sacrifice everything to protect each other. Beyond the major plot points, there are numerous smaller mysteries and questions that hopefully receive answers in the finale. Some of these might seem minor, but in Stranger Things, everything usually connects somehow. The Mind Flayer's role is one that's particularly curious. We know it originated from the Abyss, that it's this massive shadow creature that's been controlling the Demogorgons and possessing people since Season 2, but we haven't really seen it in Season 5 yet. It's been all Vecna all the time. So where is the Mind Flayer? Is it still in the Abyss waiting? Is it working with Vecna, or is Vecna controlling it? The first shadow play heavily implies that the Mind Flayer is actually the real puppet master, that it corrupted Henry Creel in the first place. If that's accurate, defeating Vecna might not be enough. The Mind Flayer could still be out there, and the finale needs to address what happens to it when the wormhole collapses. The Russian connection is another thread that feels unfinished. We had Dmitri, Yuri, and Enzo helping Hopper escape from the prison in Season 4, and there was that whole subplot about the Russians having their own Demogorgon and trying to open their own gate to the Upside Down. Does that play into the finale at all? Are the Russians still experimenting with this? Could they become a problem in the future? Or did the collapse of the Soviet Union shut down their program? It would be interesting if there was some acknowledgement of the international implications here, that America isn't the only country that knows about the Upside Down. Hawkins itself needs addressing. The town's been under military quarantine for months at this point. Soldiers everywhere, people trapped in their homes, businesses shut down. When the Upside Down gets sealed and the threat disappears, what happens next? Does the military simply pack up and leave? Do they try to cover everything up with some official story about a chemical spill or a gas leak? Do the people of Hawkins even remember what really happened? And what about the giant rifts that opened up at the end of Season 4? Those are massive scars on the landscape. The other lab children are worth considering. We know there were multiple test subjects before 11. We saw some of them in Season 4 when we got Henry Creel's backstory. But are there others still out there? Kids who escaped, or were released, or are being held in other facilities? If the military's been using Kaylee's blood to try to create more powered individuals, what happened to those experiments? Are there other 11s and Carlys out there that we don't know about? That could be connected to the spin-off tease. Eddie Munson's legacy has been mentioned as resonating throughout Season 5, and hopefully We get some kind of tribute to him in the finale. Dustin's been grieving him all season, and the Hellfire Club clearly misses him. Perhaps there's a scene where they dedicate a Dungeons and Dragons campaign to his memory, or where his name gets cleared publicly so people stop thinking he was responsible for those deaths. Eddie deserves that much. Vecna's final form is something Jamie Campbell Bower teased in interviews. Apparently, there's a redesign. He's thinner and more monstrous than he was in Season 4. We caught glimpses of it in the teaser trailer, but the finale probably gives us the full reveal, that final evolution where he's shedding the last remnants of his humanity and becoming pure abyss creature. And what about the supernatural survivors? Will keeps his powers after all this is over, doesn't he? And what happens to the 12 children who were used as Vecna's battery? Do they return to being normal kids, or are they changed forever? Holly's definitely going to have experiences to process from this, and she's only 8 years old. That's quite substantial for someone so young. These might seem like small details, but they're the kind of thing that will determine whether the ending feels complete or rushed. If one had to speculate what the actual ending will be, not necessarily what one wants, but what feels most true to Stranger Things, here's the thought. Vecna gets defeated, the Upside Down gets sealed, but not everyone makes it out. There's going to be one major loss, probably either Eleven or Will, though the lean is toward it being a supporting character like Carly, or perhaps even Steve, in a last-second heroic sacrifice. The Duffer Brothers have been clear that they're not doing a massacre, but they've also stated the stakes need to feel real and that deaths need to resonate. So one significant loss that affects the audience and the characters deeply, but leaves the core group mostly intact. The survivors will be changed though, scarred both literally and metaphorically. Perhaps a scene a few months after the final battle, where we see them trying to return to normal life, and you can tell by the way they move, the way they interact, that they're not the same people anymore. Will might have permanent marks from his connection to the Upside Down. Max might still be dealing with the psychological aftermath of being trapped in Vecna's mind. Eleven might have lost her powers completely, or perhaps they're weaker now, flickering. Hawkins itself will be scarred as well. Those massive rifts aren't going to simply disappear. The town will probably be rebuilding, physically putting itself back together while trying to process what happened. And there will probably be some kind of memorial, something permanent that honours everyone who was lost, not just in Season 5, but Barb and Bob, and Billy, and Eddie, and all the others who died fighting this thing. The sacrifice, whoever makes it, needs to happen in a way that feels earned. There should be a moment where they get to say goodbye properly, where they tell the people they love exactly how they feel. No regrets, no words left unsaid. If it's 11, she needs to hear Mike tell her he loves her one more time. If it's Will, he needs to know that Joyce and Jonathan are proud of him. If it's Steve, he needs to know that he found his purpose and his family, even if he didn't get his 6 kids. I love you. Thank you. I'm not scared. Those are the kinds of lines that will create emotional moments, but despite the loss, there needs to be hopefulness. Life continuing, love persisting, friendship enduring. The epilogue will probably show us that the survivors are okay, or at least they will be. They're moving forward, they're healing. Perhaps Dustin's off at college studying engineering. Perhaps Lucas and Max are together and happy. Perhaps Robin's openly herself without fear. Perhaps Joyce and Hopper finally get married in a small ceremony with just the people they love. The ending will probably circle back to the beginning. We'll likely see Will on those swings from the pilot episode, or the group sitting around a Dungeons and Dragons table again, like they did in Season 1. Mike rolling the dice for a campaign, everyone laughing, and for just a moment, everything feels normal and safe and good. That callback to simpler times before any of this started, but with the weight of everything they've been through evident in how they play, how they relate to each other. Perhaps the final shot is someone asking a question that echoes one of the first lines of the entire series, bringing it full circle. Or perhaps it's simply the camera pulling back from Hawkins, showing the town from above, scarred, but surviving, and the screen fades to black. Somewhere in that epilogue, probably in the background of a scene or in a brief news report or in dialogue that seems incidental, there'll be the spin-off tease. Something about an incident in another town, or a government program that survived, or a character noticing something strange. Small enough to miss, but significant enough to build a whole new story around. It's bittersweet, it's emotional. It acknowledges that fighting monsters changes you forever, but that life is still worth living on the other side. It honours the sacrifices while celebrating the victories. And most importantly, it feels like Stranger Things. Not grim, not saccharine, but honest about the cost of heroism while still believing in the power of love and friendship. That, to this observer, would be quite a fitting ending. Not perfect in the sense of everyone getting exactly what they want, but perfect in the sense of feeling true to the story they've been telling for almost a decade. Now, let's discuss some of the more unusual theories that probably won't happen, but are interesting to contemplate anyway. The "it was all Dungeons and Dragons" theory is one that appears in every fandom with fantasy elements, and Stranger Things is no exception. The idea is that everything we've watched for 5 seasons was actually just the kids playing their campaign. 11 was their character, the Demogorgon was the monster they were fighting in the game, and the whole thing has been one elaborate session. It would explain some of the more fantastical elements and the game-like structure of how the seasons unfold. Why it won't happen. Because it would invalidate the entire emotional journey of the series. All the deaths, all the trauma, all the relationships, none of it would have been real. The Duffer Brothers would receive considerable criticism from fans, and rightfully so. It's the kind of ending that feels clever for about 5 seconds before you realise it's simply lazy writing. Plus, they've specifically stated the ending will feel inevitable and earned, and this is neither. The everyone dies theory is the nihilistic option. Total party elimination. Vecna wins, Hawkins gets destroyed, the world ends. Some fans genuinely think this could happen because it would be shocking and subversive. But the Duffer Brothers literally stated they're not doing a Red Wedding situation. They've said they're not eliminating 8 characters. This theory ignores everything they've told us about their approach to the ending. Also, Stranger Things has never been a particularly dark show. It's always balanced darkness with hope, horror with heart. Ending with everyone deceased would betray the entire tone of the series. The 11 is Vecna time loop theory is quite unusual, but it's been circulating. The idea is that 11 eventually becomes Vecna through some kind of circular timeline situation. Perhaps the Upside Down doesn't just bend space, it bends time, and old 11 from the future is actually Henry Creel. The powers match, the connection to the lab matches, and it would explain why Vecna seems to know so much about her. It's possible, but unlikely. Time travel is on the table now, that we know the Upside Down is a wormhole. But making 11 the antagonist all along would require so much recontextualization and explanation that it would take over the entire finale. Plus, we've literally seen Henry Creel as a child in multiple flashbacks. Unless those are all false memories or something, which just gets too complicated. Then there's the multiple timelines theory, where the wormhole creates split realities and different outcomes exist simultaneously. Everyone dies in one timeline but lives in another, and perhaps the finale shows us both, or lets characters choose which timeline becomes real. It's very multiverse oriented, very trendy right now, with recent films making that popular. But it's not really Stranger Things style, is it? The show's always been fairly straightforward with its storytelling. One timeline, one reality, consequences that matter. Introducing multiverse concepts in the last episode would feel like jumping on a trend rather than telling its own story. The "it's all in Will's mind" theory suggests that Will never actually escaped the Upside Down back in season 1. Everything since then has been a fantasy he's created to cope with being trapped there. It would explain some inconsistencies and why certain things don't make logical sense. This one creates considerable frustration because it absolutely won't happen and most fans strongly dislike it. The Duffer Brothers would never do this. It's the same problem as the Dungeons and Dragons theory, invalidating everything we've watched. Plus, it would mean Will created a fantasy where he's constantly traumatized and possessed, which doesn't make any sense. There's also the Hawkins' Dimension X theory, which flips everything. What if their world is actually the abyss, and the Upside Down is the real Earth? They've been in the wrong dimension all along, and just didn't know it. Mind-bending, certainly, but there's been absolutely no setup for this. It's the kind of twist that sounds interesting as a discussion post, but would be quite frustrating to watch. The evidence fans use for these theories is usually fairly tenuous. Easter eggs that are simply coincidences, dialogue taken out of context, visual parallels that are just the show's aesthetic. And while a good theory is always enjoyable, some of these require such massive leaps in logic that they're more entertaining to consider than seriously contemplate. So most of these are quite far-fetched. But well, stranger things have happened. One thing we know for certain is that there's a Stranger Things spin-off coming, and the Duffer Brothers have stated there's a hint in the finale that points to what it'll be about. The spin-off has been confirmed to be in development at Netflix, and we know a few basic things about it. It's going to feature new characters, not the main cast we've been following for 5 seasons. It's set in a different era or time period from the main series, and it's somehow connected to the Stranger Things universe, though the exact nature of that connection is being kept quite secret. What makes this particularly interesting is Ross Duffer's comment to the press. He said there's one small scene in the finale that gives a hint as to what the spin-off will be, that they'll see if people pick up on it. And then Matt Duffer, apparently surprised that his brother was revealing this, asked why he was giving people that information. It's this delightful moment of one creator being excited to share and the other wanting to keep the mystery intact. So we know it's there. We know it's small. We know it'll be easy to miss on first viewing, and the entire community is going to be analysing every single frame of the finale looking for it. The popular theories about what the spin-off could be are quite varied. Many people think it might be set in the 1950s or 60s, during the early days of the government experiments that eventually led to Brenner and the lab. We could follow the scientists who first discovered the abyss, or the early test subjects before the Numbered Children program really developed. The first shadow play covers some of this ground, but there's definitely more story to tell. Others think it'll be set in the 1990s or early 2000s after the main series ends, perhaps following a new generation dealing with the aftermath of Hawkins, or a completely different town where similar supernatural events start happening. The idea that the government had programs in multiple locations, not just Hawkins, would make sense. There's also speculation about an international setting. What if the Russians weren't the only other country experimenting with the Upside Down? What if there are gates opening in other parts of the world? A spin-off set in Japan or the UK or Brazil could explore how different cultures would respond to these supernatural threats. Some fans think it'll be more focused on the military and government side of things, like a thriller mixed with Stranger Things elements, following the people who are covering up these incidents, the agents who are hunting powered individuals, the conspiracies within conspiracies. What we should be watching for in the finale are background details that seem insignificant. A news report playing on a television in the corner of a scene about strange happenings somewhere else. Dialogue where someone mentions a relative who lives in another town and unusual events have been happening there as well. Documents or files that Dustin or someone finds that reference other programs or locations. A character we've never seen before, appearing briefly, perhaps even just walking past in the background of a crowd scene. Time period indicators would be a giveaway as well. If we see a flashback to an earlier decade or a flash forward to a later one, pay attention to everything in that scene. Names, places, dates, anything that could be built into a whole new story. The epilogue scenes are probably where it'll be hidden. That's when the main story is wrapped up, and the Duffer Brothers can afford to plant seeds for the future without distracting from the emotional resolution. Many will definitely be rewatching the finale multiple times simply to hunt for this Easter egg, and the whole community will be comparing observations trying to figure it out. The main story ends on December 31st, but the Stranger Things universe is far from over. Before we conclude, it's worth discussing why this finale is such a significant event in the first place. Because while it's simply a television show, it's also so much more than that for many people. Stranger Things isn't just Netflix's flagship series. It's the show that essentially defined what streaming television could be. When it premiered back in July 2016, nobody knew if Netflix originals could compete with traditional networks. And then this unusual 80s throwback show about kids and monsters became a global phenomenon practically overnight. It proved that streaming platforms could create cultural moments, not just content to consume and forget. The numbers alone are quite remarkable. We're talking billions of viewing hours across all seasons, trending worldwide every time new. Episodes arrive, merchandise everywhere, Halloween costumes, theme park attractions. Stranger Things became bigger than a show. It became a brand, a cultural touchstone, a shared experience for people across the world. But what really makes this finale matter is the nostalgia factor. The Duffer Brothers created this love letter to 80s Spielberg and Stephen King, to a time when kids rode bikes everywhere and had adventures and solved mysteries. And they did it so well that even people who weren't alive in the 80s feel nostalgic for it. It taps into something universal about childhood and friendship, and that feeling of summer lasting forever. For many people, Stranger Things became comfort viewing, something you could put on when the world felt too heavy and simply escape into Hawkins for a while. During difficult times, especially when we were all stuck at home and concerned, re-watching Stranger Things was like visiting old friends. The show helped us through some really challenging periods, and that creates a connection that goes beyond normal television appreciation. We've also literally grown up with these characters. Millie Bobby Brown was 12 years old when she filmed season 1. Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Noah Schnapp, they were all children, and now they're adults. We've watched them age in real time, watched their acting improve, watched them become the characters they're portraying. That's rare in television. The collective experience of watching Stranger Things has been special as well. The theories online, the discussions, the reaction videos, the fan art, the cosplay, it's brought people together in a way that's increasingly rare in our fragmented media landscape. Friendships have formed over shared appreciation of these characters. People have bonded over debating theories and analysing episodes, and now there's substantial pressure on the Duffer Brothers to conclude this properly. We've all observed what happens when beloved shows struggle with their endings. The stakes for Stranger Things are arguably even higher, because it's been built up for so long, because the wait between season 4 and season 5 was 3 years, because everyone has such strong feelings about how it should end. The representation in the show matters as well. Will's coming out story has meant everything to viewers who saw themselves in his struggle. Having a character who's been there since the beginning come out and be accepted, that's quite significant. The show's handled it with care and respect, and the finale needs to honour that. So while it's simply a television show, it's also a piece of our lives, a shared cultural experience, a comfort, and an inspiration. That's why the finale matters. Let's conclude with some actual predictions and hopes. For when the finale arrives on New Year's Eve, what will probably happen? Vecna gets defeated through the combined efforts of everyone. The Upside Down collapses and gets sealed away from Earth forever. At least one major character dies, and the lean is toward it being either Carly in a redemption sacrifice or possibly even Will, though that would be quite devastating. 11 survives, but loses her powers in the process, which solves the military problem without requiring her death. The 12 kidnapped children all get rescued, including Holly. The found family stays mostly intact. There's a time jump epilogue showing everyone healing and moving forward, and somewhere in that ending, hidden in a background detail or incidental line, there's the spin-off tease. That feels like the Duffer Brothers style. Bittersweet but hopeful, earned but not gratuitous. One heartbreaking loss balanced against multiple victories. What would be genuinely hoped for? Steve gets his happy ending, whatever that looks like for him. Whether it's with Nancy or simply finding peace with who he's become, he deserves to not meet a tragic end. Will's story gets honoured properly. His coming out was such a beautiful moment, and seeing him go into the final battle confident and loved, not scared and alone, would be wonderful. Max fully recovers from her time in the mindscape and gets to simply be a teenager again with Lucas. Dustin gets a proper hero moment that showcases how brilliant he is. Joyce and Hopper both survive and get to be happy together after everything they've been through. The entire party makes it out alive, changed but together. Holly being rescued successfully and reunited with Mike and Nancy, all 12 of those children going home to their families. Erica having another scene where she's completely capable, Murray having one final unexpected moment that somehow saves the day. What would be quite heartbreaking, Will dying right after coming out. That would feel cruel rather than meaningful. 11 dying alone without getting to say goodbye properly to the people she loves. Steve dying before he gets any kind of happiness or resolution with Nancy. Both 11 and Kaylee dying when there could have been another way. Jonathan dying because Joyce has been through enough and losing another son would destroy her. Dustin dying because Steve would never recover from that loss. Holly not making it because she's 8 years old and that would be too dark even for this show. What would feel unsatisfying? Everyone living without any real consequences. Some convenient solution that fixes everything easily. The "it was all a dream" or any variation of that. An unexplained happy ending that ignores all the setup about the military and the blood experiments. Resurrecting characters who died in previous seasons. Ignoring character growth and development for shock value twists. What would be absolutely fitting? One meaningful sacrifice that resonates. Perhaps it's Carly, perhaps it's a supporting character we care about, perhaps it's even 11, but done in a way that feels right. Everyone else survives but carries the weight of what they've been through. An epilogue set several months later showing them healing. A scene around a dinner table or a Dungeons and Dragons game that mirrors season 1, but with the maturity and scars of everything since. The original soundtrack playing, perhaps Should I Stay or Should I Go one more time. A credits montage showing where everyone ends up, and then a post-credit scene with the spin-off tease that gets everyone discussing immediately. That's what feels right. That's what seems appropriate. But honestly, there's trust in the Duffer Brothers. They've earned that trust over 5 seasons. Whatever they've planned will probably be emotional and beautiful and likely quite moving. We'll discover how accurate or inaccurate these thoughts are in just a few days. And that, dear friends, is where we find ourselves with Stranger Things Season 5. The finale arrives on December 31st at 8 in the evening Eastern, 5 in the afternoon Pacific. The anticipation for how this all unfolds is quite substantial. We've explored the theories, the predictions, the hopes and concerns, and now all that remains is to actually watch it happen. There will definitely be more to discuss after the finale arrives, to talk about what transpired, what was accurate, what was unexpected, and how it all felt. It's been quite a journey with these characters, and it's been a pleasure taking it together. Until next time, stay safe, rest well, and sweet dreams. We'll see you on the other side of the upside down.